Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Crunch Time, brought to you live by the Fantasy Football by Broto app. Go to the App Store, go to your Google Play Store, download that ish. It is free and it is excellent. As always, we will open up the morning. Well, maybe I should introduce my guest. What up, Themi? I'm joined today by @GridironGreek on Twitter. Themi, how are you doing this morning, my friend?
I'm doing good, Matt. I'm excited to be here. This is my second time on.
Yeah, we had a good time last time. I figured we should run it back. And now that it's week 14, I needed somebody with some heavy hitting knowledge to bring on to get these cats into the playoffs. So that's why I'm here. And then I brought Themi for the comedic relief. So as always, I mean, I could put the banner up, but you guys know what it is. We're going to start with a little bit of player news right away. As we get through the player news, send your questions in. I'll guarantee to answer all questions before we close out the stream. Usually close out around noon, but we ran half hour late last week rather. We will not leave you hanging. I promise you that. First up, I guess, first thing, we'll just go in chronological order from when the news is coming out. Buccaneers running back Leonard Fournette, he didn't practice Friday, listed as questionable for Sunday due to a foot injury, is expected to play. Against the 49ers, I'm already incredibly worried about that backfield in general. I wrote about it in the Sleeper Bust article with mentioning Rachaad White in a potential time split and against that 49ers defense. I'm not feeling any better about Leonard Fournette. If you have a viable pivot, I think there's probably a good reason to want to make it here. Foot injury aside, in a vacuum, starting running backs against the 49ers have not been very profitable this year. Amari Cooper listed as questionable for Sunday due to a hip injury. He is expected to play, and the hip injury came up after 2 full practices, and then I think it was Thursday it popped up in practice. So injuries like that are a little more concerning for me. Now didn't practice, limited practice, goes into the game with a questionable, is expected to play. How do you feel about Cooper?
This is the type of game where I think the wide receivers can do great. But I'm not going to really bank on super high performance. It's weird because the Bengals are not favored by a lot. They're moving up to 6.5, and now it's 5.5. So it seems like the sharp money is really on the Browns to keep this close, and it's not going to be because of their defense. Their defense is awful. The Texans were, I think, beating them at one point last week. Without anyone on the offense. Amari Cooper is probably going to get by just on volume. I don't think the injury is that much of a concern if he's expected to play. I don't think he's ever really been used as, a decoy this season. And I don't think this is the type of injury that's going to limit that or lead to that. But, in general, the Bengals defense, I think, is actually incredible. If I can pull it up for 1 second.
Quite good.
Yeah, okay. They're 14th against wide receivers in fantasy when you're looking at a true matchup rank. And then in passing DVOA, Cincinnati's 10th. So, I think this is the type of game where the Bengals are probably going to run up the score, unless the Browns are going to do what they did last time against them, which is, just pick off Joe Burrow a bunch, get lucky, and win the game. But with Jamar Chase back and the offense really rolling, if Amari Cooper gets those garbage time points, I think that's fine. Just don't expect the rest of the offense to explode in Deshaun Watson's second game after he looked awful.
Yeah, I agree there. Trevor Lawrence missed most of all of the practices last week, got in a limited, listed as questionable for a toe injury, which was also a knee injury, which was also an ankle injury. But he did return in that game after taking that kind of scary hit and looked quite well against the Lions last week. So I'm not super concerned against the Titans, who are a pretty positive matchup for the passing game. Somebody that I am a little more concerned about, though, is Saquon Barkley, who is listed as what they say is a legitimate 50-50 chance to play. They want to see how he feels during warmups. Obviously, potential setbacks during warmups could lead to him not being in your lineup at all. How are you going to pivot off of Saquon?
Well, I think it's very lucky that the Giants almost always play at 1:00, and they're playing at 1:00 today. I don't know if there's like a
Early
backup
saves,
I
yeah.
really like, on the Giants specifically. But if you're looking for someone to pick up, geez,
I
I
think
don't.
it's Breida. I mean, if there is a handcuff to Saquon, it's seemingly Matt Breida. I wouldn't feel incredibly good about him in a matchup against the Eagles. I think if Saquon is ruled out, you might actually be looking towards like afternoon pivots.
Mhm.
Guys like Latavius Murray potentially still available. Obviously Travis Homer, who getting into player news, no Kenneth Walker or very they basically said like unless a miracle happens, Kenneth Walker won't play. Is what the Seattle beat reporters were kind of indicating. So yeah, there are some late afternoon pivots there. But losing Saquon's a huge blow, and that obviously brings me to my next one. Kenneth Walker game time decision. I'm not in love with that backfield at all. And then getting into a little more Seattle news, like Geno shoulder injury, DK Metcalf hip injury, both will play, but like that offense could be a little bit limited. And I think any member of that backfield is pretty much touchdown dependent this week for fantasy. They'll all vulture volume from each other, like the little rotational committee that they have. And Travis Homer is maybe the best option of them all, but still touchdown dependent in an offense that might be downgraded against a Carolina Panthers defense that has been looking at like the best part of the team. Let's just put it that way.
Well, I mean, this is a matchup between two terrible run defenses. The Panthers are
Facts.
they're eighth in total in matchup rank, but they're fourth against both the rush and receiving for running backs. And the Seahawks have been just awful, against the ground. I think this is a game where maybe they just both run the ball a lot. So you got Foreman going off, and then you've got Homer if he's the starter going off. But is it that like far fetched to say that even in a committee you could expect like two running backs out of Seattle to succeed if
Eh,
Geno's not throwing a lot? Because then you eliminate
potentially.
DK, Tyler Lockett, Noah Fant. I mean, if the passing game is not going to work, then you got the running game there. And then if the passing game does work and they start dominating them, which they're not expected to, it's only about a 4-point line. Then you got the running potential to end the game.
Yeah, the garbage time running potential. I agree there. Yeah, I mean, there's obviously going to be some upside, and especially I guess because what led to this is Barkley and some of those other running backs having early injury designations. So there are some late afternoon pivots here, and I think Themi makes a good point. Now that we're that basically wraps it up. There is one more, Damian Harris, not going to play Monday Night Football, but Ramondre Stevenson's a league winner week in and week out. I don't think you have to question whether or not you're upgrading, downgrading him. He's an RB1. Hopping right into it, we got Joe up in here saying good morning. We got Nick, our boy. What up, Nick? He was hopping on the crunch time last week, helped us out with the long episode. We were on absolute fire, so the bar is high. Hanson De La Garza in here as always. Yeah, it's week 14. All right, let's hop into the first question. Brandon up in here. Foreman or Murray? I'm assuming Deontay Foreman and Latavius Murray.
Yeah.
If it's a Kyler question, then ridiculous. But yeah.
Good
I mean,
super flex question.
yeah. I'll just preface it with saying that Deontay Foreman is somebody that I genuinely believe has top 10 upside. As we were just alluding in that Seahawks matchup, I can see a lot of rushing production. I kind of was writing that matchup in that sleeper ranking before the Geno shoulder injury kind of seemed to be worse than they were leading on, so to speak, as news got throughout that he was continuing to be limited in practice. So I think that means even better things, as that game script looks pretty positive for a run game. But the Seattle Seahawks also allow 17.6 points per game of rushing production alone. And we know that Foreman can kind of get game scripted out of the passing game for sure. But 17.6 of rushing production alone. And one of the reasons that he can continue to put up 100 scrimmage yards in 4 of his last 6 games is those 2 games he was absolutely game scripted out of the offense, but he's so successful on the ground that they don't have any other options to look to. DJ Moore just put up over 70 or 68%, close to 70% of Sam Darnold's total net yardage, who will be the starting quarterback again this week. His total net yardage, and Deontay Foreman had more yards than both of them. So, like that's just, he is the only way that the offense functions. I love him in this matchup, and I absolutely think you should start him over Latavius Murray.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. If you look at Foreman's game logs, like, yeah, he's not really used in the passing game, and even in PPR, that's fine because, like you said, it's the rushing potential that really gets him there. You look at when the team is winning or at least close. He's got 118 yards, 118 yards. Then when they got blown out by the Bengals, which they were expected to, 23 yards. Then when they beat the Falcons, 130. Then against the Ravens, when he was my bust, 24 yards. Then when they beat the Broncos, 113. So it's like,
that was against a Broncos defense that has been incredibly difficult to.
The only person that I know of that really exploded against them otherwise was Josh Jacobs, who is scoring 3 touchdowns a game and putting up 200 rushing yards. I think Foreman, despite the fact that he catches absolutely no passes, maybe he'll get a lucky one for 2 yards or -1 yard, and you get that 0.9 points. You're basically getting probably 100 yards out of him, and then maybe a touchdown. And Latavius Murray is basically banking on hitting on his receiving production, which he hasn't done. He's caught a few passes here and there for less than 30 yards. His rushing is all right, but the Chiefs are pretty good against the run, and they just don't score touchdowns. You could see a path for touchdowns with Sam Darnold at quarterback, like you said. The offense looks better. He's playing really great. So I think for me, it's easily Foreman, just for the boom is not like insane, but it's much better than what Murray offers.
Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, the Broncos are scoring less than 13 points per game right now. Like, that's just, it's obviously
scoring at all.
Yeah, dead last in the league, and against the Chiefs defense as well. Like, speaking of game scripted out, Kansas, the Broncos defense is absolutely phenomenal and arguably the best secondary in the league, but I would not bet against Patrick Mahomes on any given Sunday. So I certainly believe that the Chiefs will be able to put up the points against them and then kind of just kill the clock out, which is bad news for Latavius Murray. Mike Hawk in here. Flex play in full PPR, Judy or Mike Evans. I'm going to go Jerry Jeudy here. No Cortland Sutton. There's a high volume for targets. And I mean, I kind of segued myself into it. The Broncos are going to play from behind. For better or worse, obviously worse, as we now have a 14-game sample size or 13-game sample size. Passing volume for Russell Wilson doesn't necessarily mean good things. But Jerry Jeudy with no Cortland Sutton being the target hog that he kind of is in their shared game splits in the first place. More passing volume at lower depth of target because they need to move the ball and need to keep the clock from running against the Chiefs. I like Jerry Jeudy here, and I don't really like Mike Evans. I mean, I do in general, of course. Mike Evans is a phenomenal football player, an absolute legend. First guy to ever put up 8 1,000-yard seasons. All great and goodness, but it just hasn't been the same Mike Evans as old lately. And Chris Godwin has been dominating target shares. Mike Evans was 4th in receptions on the team last week, 3rd the week before that, behind both Chris Godwin and Rachaad White. Out-snapped, out-targeted by Godwin heavily. And Cade Otton even had more targets than him on a smaller route percentage. So yeah, Mike Evans just really does feel like every week you're hoping for that 1 catch, 1 yard, 1 touchdown.
I think that makes sense. And, I think the game script plays a big part into it. And when you look at the totals, the Bucs and the 49ers, 37 points is the projected point total, or at least what's closing right now. Expect it to be a bit of a closer game. So even though, like, I know you don't like Rachaad White or anyone in the Buccaneers backfield because this is an incredibly bad matchup, but the 49ers are so well-rounded on defense that they're basically going to stop anyone. Maybe Brady can pull out some magic like he did at the end of the Saints game, but the 49ers aren't the Saints. And, you could just see him throwing pick after pick after pick and just not getting the ball to the receivers. And, maybe he favors someone else instead. Like you said, Mike Evans isn't really, doing much, not to, the fault of his own, but, just the offense kind of sucks right now. So I
Yeah,
think they'll actually finish pretty close in points, but I think you do give Judy the edge because the Chiefs secondary is a little friendlier probably. And the game script, they're almost 10-point underdogs, the Broncos. And Russell Wilson has been he has the potential to kind of get back there. He's not 40 years old yet.
right, and yeah, I mean, Mike Evans has kind of had declining and menial target shares over the past 2 seasons, but obviously has upheld that production and those points per game from season-long perspectives with incredible touchdowns and those 1,000-yard seasons. He's not getting 1,000 yards this year, and he certainly doesn't have 15 touchdowns again. So, yeah, it's Mike Evans. Not just this week in a perceived bad matchup, but certainly downgraded rest of the season as well, in my opinion. Hanson De La Garza back in here. Really need big time help in this week. On my flex, I need to start someone full PPR. James Cook, Travis Homer. Needs prayers and helps. He's on the bubble. So prayers first, and here comes the help. I think I'm going to go with James Cook here.
Really?
Yeah, and here's why. Travis Homer has never had more than double-digit carries in a single game in his entire career. I know that you were, I think there's some high upside potential. It's very risky upside, but I think there's some potential and risky upside in that Seahawks backfield and, the matchup that we were talking about. But James Cook in 2 of the last 3 games has outsnapped Devin Singletary, had more touches than him for the first time in their career last week. And again, I said this on the Thursday pod, but whether that is a function of them wanting to keep Devin Singletary healthier for a playoff run because they've essentially stamped their ticket to at the very least a wild card, or that is a product of them having an innate confidence in James Cook actually maintaining a lead role, does not matter for your fantasy lineups. It doesn't matter why he's getting more touches. It doesn't matter why he's getting more opportunity. The fact of the matter is that he is. And James Cook, in those 2 games where he had more touches and if Devin Singletary hadn't have found the end zone last week, would have had more fantasy points than him as well. Certainly had much more efficient production in both the passing and rushing game. Has been 5 for 5 catching passes, 6 for 6 catching passes. So the whole reason he got drafted, Buffalo is seemingly starting to use him as. I will hear all other debates for Travis Homer, but I think that's where my heart's leaning. And I will at least preface that it is very close.
You do bring up a good point. He is getting a lot more work. For a while, he wasn't really getting over a quarter of offensive snaps. And then last week, whether it was because it was a big win or whatever, he got 14 rushes. He caught all 6 of his targets for 41 receiving yards. Didn't get a touchdown, but that's kind of random with the Bills. They're so good that they could just probably throw it, a 40-yard touchdown and then not need, that 1-yard rush or whatever. So it's just a product of the offense and randomness. I don't think you can always bank on it's weird. Okay. The Jets are a great defense.
Yep.
And statistically, they're great against the run as well. However, points over average say that they're all right. They're middle of the pack, and they're actually pretty, giving when it comes to receiving by running backs, which James Cook is getting more involved in. It's a bit sporadic, but he had 5 targets week 3, then 4 in week 9 against the Jets. Didn't do much with them, but whatever. Then against Detroit, week 12, 5, and then another 6 targets last week, like we said. But I still can't get over the fact that Travis Homer just has the much better matchup.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, he has the much better matchup, and he does have a potential for a 3-down workload. And I say that with hesitation because I don't really believe that you can allocate. I don't like not even vacated targets, but like vacated opportunities, vacated snaps. Whether people like to use that stat or not, it is real because a player has a certain amount of opportunities and now he has left those opportunities behind. They have to allocate the offense somehow, right? And it's usually a trickle down effect. You can't just be like, oh, look, Kenneth Walker gets 25 rush attempts per game. Now Travis Homer will. It's usually a trickle down effect. It's no, those are 25 plays that they need to figure out. It's not 25 rush attempts that they need to figure out. So that's where I get a little hesitant with a guy in Travis Homer's talent tier who has had kind of leading roles before, with Rashad Penny missing games and Chris Carson missing games, and has had, big opportunities, and obviously has had big plays like 50-yard fake punt touchdown that put him in an RB1 tier last year. So yeah, I don't disagree with you at all. I think it's very close. I think there's a safer floor with James Cook and a higher ceiling with Travis Homer.
Yeah, it is. Well, he says he needs big time help this week, but the thing is James Cook's, let's say 11 points gonna help you more
That's essentially where I have
than Travis Homer's, 5. And in some cases it really does. You might want that level of safety. Even if you do need big time help, because getting 11, 12, 13 points, like what Mike Davis was giving when he was, a starter, when McCaffrey was down, whatever, a year or two ago, it's not the best production in the world, but as your RB2, RB3, well, it's your flex. So there you go. Your flex is getting you basically 13 points, hopefully.
Yeah, I think it comes down to ceiling versus floor and what type of big time help. I mean, I guess I should have, kind of gone into that strategy a little bit more with there's definitely, I think if you're searching for 20 points,
Homer. Yeah,
exactly. If that's really what you need out of this lineup, but if you need somebody to not lose you your week and you have, solid help from the top down, I don't hate James Cook. And like I said, projections for me have them both just under 12 points right now. But a touchdown could change that for Travis Homer incredibly, because that 12 points really doesn't even project a touchdown in there. It's like I kind of use Mike Clay's touchdown parlay, like 0.4 touchdowns per game. So yeah. Hopping into the next one.
He's a homer.
Yeah. James Conner, Dameon Pierce, Rachaad White, pick one, full PPR. Now I'm gonna add Nick's into this because we can just add Travis Homer into this lineup as well. So full PPR, pick one, James Conner, Dameon Pierce, Rachaad White, Travis Homer.
James Conner.
I think I agree there. And I actually have James Conner as a tier breaker down this week. But that's not a guy that you should bench by any means. I'm worried. Patriots defense 28th in points over average. But the volume is undeniably there over the other two guys. And you're playing volume for either three options in the first place. Rachaad White needs to win out receiving over Leonard Fournette, even though Lenny's hurt again. And that's where I would lean Rachaad White probably over Homer. But again, almost the same breakdown. James Cook, Rachaad White need to win out receiving production over the backs that are in front of them. And Travis Homer has a bit of higher coin flip upside, I would like to call that. In that kind of grand scheme, I think you just want guaranteed volume. Dameon Pierce has been incredibly inefficient. Rachaad White, we don't know if that volume is there. He quite literally did get benched the entire game after fumbling in the first quarter until they were like, fuck it, we need somebody to catch passes and actually win us this game. So get in there, Rachaad, and be Christian McCaffrey for a second, please. But Lenny limited, sure, obviously an uptick in volume, but you don't know how much they actually have confidence in that kid. And against the worst possible matchup for running backs against the 49ers, I'm going to lean James Conner.
And I think you can kind of disregard. I mean, it's like process of elimination. Okay, so Dameon Pierce, like you said, he's inefficient, which really doesn't even matter because he's just not like getting points anymore. He was a really good pick, looking at his first few weeks. And then, Kyle Allen comes in at quarterback and they start to really fall apart. They start getting blown out more. And, he goes from basically 90 rushing yards every game to 10 rushes for 8 yards against Washington, who have a great running defense, by the way. Didn't really do much with his receptions. Then against Miami, who, not that great against the pass, but still, Dameon Pierce, 5 rushes for 8 yards, then didn't do much with his 6 targets. Then against Cleveland, which is a great matchup, 18 rushes for 73 yards. Okay, that's 7.3 points. Then he catches 3 receptions for 22 yards. I feel like James Conner's going to get to that anyway. He'll probably score a touchdown. He'll get 3 or 4 receptions and match Pierce's receiving or beat it. And against Dallas, where they're 17-point underdogs, I think you're going to see something, similar to the past few weeks where you just can't overcome it against another great defense like he did against Washington, or he didn't do against Washington.
Right.
And then Rashad White, like you said,
agree.
Rashad White, he's going to rely on receiving upside, which I think will boost his floor a little bit. He'll probably get to 9 points, which is like a Devin Singletary type of play, which isn't, that great. It's a good RB3, maybe RB2 in a pinch. But James Conner's probably going to beat that anyway. So it's kind of
yeah.
And then to Nick's Travis Homer or Rashad White, I'm going Travis Homer there.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, I kind of don't have any arguments to push back on that. That's exactly where my process is leading as well. So yeah. Alejandro up in here asking half PPR to start one: Latavius Murray, Gus Edwards, Jeff Wilson, Devin Singletary. I'm going to lean Jeff Wilson here.
Mm-hmm.
Is that crazy to think? I mean, I love the matchup, obviously, against the Chargers, one of the, best run matchup defenses in the NFL that consistently just allow a sieve of rushing production. I know Raheem Mostert kind of had the majority of the lion's share, but I do still think both running backs are viable. And I mean, before last week, it was really the Jeff, as soon as he got traded there on deadline day, it was immediately had, one more snap, but immediately outsnapped Mostert, and then a big opportunity shift the next week and a larger one the following week. And then he kind of had that little foot injury that saw Myles Gaskin get a bit of run when Mostert was also out, and then kind of lost some of that opportunity share last week. I don't think Jeff Wilson is a negated option by any means. I like him more than Gus Edwards. J.K. Dobbins is back. If anything, all that does is remove volume that Gus Edwards needs to be, reliable in your lineups. Even if Dobbins isn't overly effective, he'll certainly get some touches, and so will Kenyon Drake, and so will Justice Hill. Murray, we touched on earlier. I do think Jeff Wilson has higher upside there.
Yeah, I thought you were going to go with Latavius Murray for some reason, and I wanted to just argue with you about that.
All right, you can still go ahead.
Okay, yeah, just pretend like you said Latavius Murray. No,
I will.
You bring up a good point with Gus Edwards. I don't like to use historical bullshit, but whenever I watch Steelers Ravens, no matter how good the Steelers run defense is, some random Ravens running back, Alex Collins, will break off for 123 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah.
And, maybe Gus Edwards is too good for that. Maybe it will be Justice Hill, breaks off 2 40-yard runs. But yeah, I don't think relying on that is great. And, two running backs coming off of injuries, trying to gain production against the Steelers in a low projected game. It could be just a run fest. Tyler Huntley's quarterback, which I think he was just targeting Mark Andrews a lot last year when he took over. We could just see that begin to come back. Gus Edwards doesn't really inspire much. What does Gus Edwards do that Devin Singletary is not going to do? One of them is probably going to get you 9 points. Gus Edwards probably going to get you 5.3. And then Latavius Murray, I think we talked about, is just very, not in a great situation. Game script is going to keep him out unless he can, get a random touchdown, and that's not something you want to bank on. Jeff Wilson has the highest upside. Probably not a lot of safety there, but he has such a good chance to just get you 22 points. High scoring offense, and like you said, it's a great matchup. The line was at 3, which I don't understand. I hammered it there. Now it's 3.5. So I guess Vegas
all because of you.
Yeah, I'm sure I move lines, right? Yeah, I'm a sharp. I think despite that, the Chargers are an excellent matchup. It's Browns, Seattle, Chargers, Lions, like those are the great rushing matchups that you target no matter what. And it's not that far fetched to think that, both, Mostert and Wilson could just kind of go off. Probably won't
Yeah,
see both go off, but yeah, you go with the high upside there.
I agree. Well, and then let's just right into the next one with Alejandro is full PPR Zonovan Knight or Murray. I mean, either he's adding, which I probably should have touched on, or another
Maybe a different
league.
league.
But
Yeah.
I think Michael Carter is back. Was limited in practice like all last week, didn't play. Got in full practices this week. I think Michael Carter genuinely eats into part of the sneaky upside that Bam Knight was showing, and it was the fact that he was catching passes. Now, I don't think Knight's going anywhere as necessarily the lead back, the starting running back, the guy that's on the depth chart, the first drive, the last drive of the game, so to speak, their sixth man. But I do think that Michael Carter plays enough of a part that it greatly affects Knight in what is not really the best matchup against Buffalo. Not a terrible one per se, but true matchup rank suggests that it's certainly not the greatest, specifically for rushing production, which obviously has been the bulk of Knight's workload. Yes, he's been a serviceable PPR flex as well with some receiving work, but yeah, bulk of that workload is going there. I mean, Latavius is just such a high volume play that I think I want him overnight.
Yeah, this is one of those questions where I would rather just you pick up someone off the waiver wire instead of having to force yourself to play one of these guys.
We're talking week 14. There's nobody on the waivers, Themi. It's
there's
barren
got to be someone,
wastelands out
man.
there.
Nah, there's gonna be some guy that scores like 3 touchdowns that no one's ever heard of. Or maybe it'll be Kyle Juszczyk, who knows? Maybe this
Ben
is his league.
Skowronek.
He's yeah, he's a wide receiver, by the way, and he already played.
Yeah, I know. That's what I mean. He's like, those were the guys that were on waivers that were going to be serviceable options.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, Zonovan Knight has been performing in a way, but this Jets offense.
I mean, so is Lat. Like he
Yeah,
has
no,
been.
But I'm sorry.
It's
What
just,
I mean is,
yeah.
what I mean is, it's not sustainable because the whole reason that the Jets' running game was so good was because of Breece Hall and also because of the way that Zach Wilson was playing. He wasn't a high volume thrower. He was throwing like Ryan Tannehill numbers, at best. Whereas, yeah, like you said, Latavius Murray's getting the volume, and Mike White's just going to throw like 50 times. And I don't expect Zonovan Knight to really, maybe 10% of that is great. 10% of 50 is great, which is what he's getting probably. But I'm not going to bank on him continuing to get volume in a bad matchup.
Right. And as far as, I've said this about the Chiefs as well. And obviously, true matchup rank and points over average, production over average in general, the DVOA, those things are big parts of my process when doing projections for offensive players. That said, you can only downgrade teams like the Bills and the Chiefs so much. Yes, it is a phenomenal defense against the Jets. Did they beat them earlier this year? Absolutely they did. And they looked incredible doing it. I'm not going to deny that. But eventually you flip a coin so many times and eventually it's going to wind up heads and it is the Bills. And they have looked phenomenal. And Josh Allen's elbow seems to be a lot healthier than it was in previous weeks. He's slinging it again. He had, when that elbow was sprained, he had 3 games in a row with multiple interceptions and then hasn't. So like it's seemingly, looking a lot better for that Buffalo offense moving forward. And it was still a high functioning offense, even when he was having all, those turnovers and they were kind of losing closer games. Kirk or Goff? Oh, legacy. I always got to introduce the folk. Kirk or Goff? Also, Etienne, Swift, or Evans, pick one. Now, I'm going to go process of elimination from the back end. I'm sitting Mike Evans for sure, especially when my 2 options on the other side of things are Etienne and Swift. If this was a week ago, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, ever, I would always lean Travis Etienne over DeAndre Swift. I'm not feeling that way this week. The Titans are one of the absolute best defenses against the run.
They're the best.
The best. The Best. Yes. And Travis Etienne, for all of our love of him as a collegiate prospect with one of the greatest receiving profiles of all time, and his market shares at Clemson, has not been targeted, has not been catching passes, has below 9% target share this season. His production has been incredible because of his explosivity, and, his 2 receptions can get 40 yards, 45 yards, and obviously had that incredible streak of multiple 100-yard scrimmage games and over 100-yard scrimmage games, and touchdowns were attached as well against the Titans, and a Titans defense that is also incredibly susceptible against the pass. I do expect the Jaguars to kind of just open up the playbook, and Christian Kirk, Zay Jones are excellent plays. They're the number 1 defense against the run and the absolute worst against the pass in points over average. So I just think it bleeds bad things for Travis Etienne in this game script. And it took until week 14 or 3 weeks of him getting back, but DeAndre Swift saw more than 50% of the snaps, more than, 50% of the rushing opportunities. He had not received over 30% in 3 weeks after returning from injury, and then absolutely dominated that share and looked like a very serviceable RB1 option doing so. I would have Swift ahead of Etienne. I'm going to start Jared Goff over Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, I'm doing the stack too. I don't think Kirk's necessarily a terrible play, but it's probably going to be a Dalvin Cook sort of situation again. Kirk Cousins has really, really low, like a really low floor. Like we saw, I think last week, I think he had or maybe a week or two ago, he had 174 yards, like a pick, maybe a touchdown at the end. But he kind of just takes advantage. He plays very safe, which, wins games. That's why they're, 10-2 or 9-3, whatever the hell they are at this point. But they're very overrated despite their record. I know that's been, parroted over and over and over again, but it's just true. They can be good, but overrated. It's not like one and the same. And
they're not mutually exclusive. Yeah, exactly.
No, exactly. And I think even 3 weeks ago, I would still have taken Swift over ETN, despite the fact that ETN was going off and the fact that Swift was still, kind of the backup, basically, just because he was still involved a lot in the limited time that he played. So when they did play him, he was basically getting a touch, and he's probably getting a touchdown too. It's not always nice to predict touchdowns, but in a super, super high projected game, I think the second highest projection all week, like 51.5 points, you got to go Swift here, and you go Goff because it's going to be a shootout, and you go with the guy who's probably going to be able to just keep slinging it in Goff versus Cousins, who, he might be a better passer for all we know, but this year he's just been a little disappointing for fantasy purposes, and they have a great running matchup for Dalvin Cook.
Right. So exactly that is they're almost equal. And as crazy as it is to sound, and specifically for fantasy production, they're essentially the same player. Jared Goff and Kirk Cousins are, and Kirk with definitely a little bit of a lower ceiling, but maybe a safer floor, exactly as you alluded. And I like Goff with the stack. I think in a matchup where as soon as Detroit gets down 1, Jared Goff attempts 50 passes. Kirk Cousins needs to be down, 2 for them to really open up the playbook and go, all right, Kirk, we'll let you sling it. So yeah, all equal, essentially the same game. Well, I mean, it is the same game, but essentially the same player. I like Jared Goff a little bit more. Moving to a little bit of tight end questions, full PPR, Greg D or David Njoku. Now, I alluded earlier with Jerry Jeudy being a pretty solid PPR play, especially with low depth of target, with Sutton being out and then playing from behind. I feel intrinsically better about Greg Dulcich in that exact same scenario.
I would go. No, go ahead.
Oh, and I was just going to say, I'm not sold on Cleveland yet. I'm not sold on that offense. I would like to see Deshaun Watson be a competent passer before I want to invest in their pass catching.
That's fair. I think at tight end, what Greg Dulcich is doing is a little more replaceable versus Njoku. I know I really don't like Cleveland this week. I'm downgrading basically all their pass catchers at least a little bit. And I don't like Watson at all. I think he's like a very big sit. You kind of wait and see, even if you have to make the playoffs. Like, it's just not really worth it, in my opinion. But the Sharps think otherwise. Maybe they think Cleveland's defense is going to step up. I don't know what the situation is where this line is like so much closer than it probably should be. But I still like the fact that Njoku's getting a lot of red zone work. He probably didn't show it last week because one, they didn't score a touchdown. He threw a pick in the end zone, and they probably didn't get that close very often. But I think now that Njoku's basically working himself back into the lineup, I'd rather take, risk getting 5 or 6 points from Njoku just from receiving instead of just getting 10 from 10, 11, 12 from Dulcich, because what I know Njoku's ceiling is 17, 18, maybe more than that, depending on how many touchdowns he catches. I only expect one at most, but I'd rather take that red zone opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I see the upside there, and Njoku still has been a little hampered. And again, I'll just really nervous about those Cleveland pass catchers. But yeah, I completely agree. He's kind of their wide receiver too, more than just a tight end. Ryan H asking Lamar, hi, hello, my friend. Lamar is out. Which QB should I play? Standard league: T-Law, Mike White, Mac Jones, Tannehill, Russell Wilson. I mean, not Russell Wilson. Certainly not Mac Jones.
Mac
I'll
Jones
just
is a
say
little
it. So
sneaky this week.
he's okay, sure, he's a little sneaky,
He
but
does
is he
have the
Trevor
matchup, but
Lawrence
he's
sneaky?
not like the
Is he
high.
Trevor Lawrence against a top 10 points over average defense sneaky? Because every time Trevor Lawrence has ever played a top 10 points over average defense this season, he's had 25 points per game or 25 fantasy points or more. I love T-Law in this matchup. I also want to this is a little bit more narrative based, and it's certainly not where I hammer a lot of my analysis, but the Jaguars have their fate in their hands as far as the playoffs are concerned. They play the Titans twice to close out the season. That is the team that is 2 games ahead of them in the AFC South. They beat the Titans twice. It doesn't matter what happens through the rest of their schedule. They're in the playoffs. So this is really put up or shut up time for the kid that's supposed to be a generational quarterback. And he has looked that part in moments this season. And a lot of those moments have come against obvious defensive matchups that you would attack for the quarterback position. I like T-Law over legitimately all of those options and as a top 12 fantasy quarterback this week.
I think that's a very fair, way to put it. I think it basically boils down to, do you want Trevor Lawrence or do you want Ryan Tannehill in a game that they're both going to have to throw a lot in? And yeah, I like Ryan Tannehill a lot this week. I think he's going to exceed expectations. Obviously, Treylon Burks being ruled out hurts that a lot. But you do go Lawrence because his worst passing games are probably just as good as Ryan Tannehill's almost best. And he's been heating up in recent weeks. I know you look at last week, Detroit, they lost 40-14. He only completed 17 of his 31 attempts, 179 yards and a touchdown. Doesn't look like a ton of upside, but it just happens that way. And he went off against Baltimore. He went off against Kansas City a little bit. He's not throwing really many picks anymore. And yeah, the Tennessee defense is soft, like you said. I think you go T-Law here too.
This is the next one's kind of tough, and I'm gonna let you take off the top just so that I can quickly sneak and look up true matchup ranks. But Kareem Hunt, Ty Johnson, or Mike Boone, who is returning back to that Denver lineup, but I still like Murray as the lead role and essentially 18 touches a game. I think you can slot Mike Boone in for under 10 touches. But that said, that's probably true about both of those other guys as well. So Kareem Hunt, Ty Johnson, Mike Boone.
Kareem Hunt hasn't had a great season at all, really. And he didn't look that great last week, but no one really did, just because of the way the offense was rolling. But I think when it comes to a player is going to be the absolute RB2 in this game, and he's going to catch some passes and he's going to get targets, maybe Ty Johnson or Mike Boone have more upside, but I think it's more of a random upside, whereas
which is touchdown
you can actually see a path towards how he's going to get that upside. Maybe the Deshaun Watson looks good. Maybe he doesn't, but maybe he needs to dink and dunk, those passes. There's a few ways. Yeah, there's a few ways for Kareem Hunt to get up to, double digit half PPR points. They're still a great rushing team overall. They use Nick Chubb a lot, but they're going to use Kareem Hunt every once in a while. He's going to break off a big run probably. Versus Ty Johnson and Mike Boone, they're not nearly as talented. They're in situations that are looking bad, and like you said, they're not. At least Mike Boone's not really like set for a lot of touches, and really no one in
Correct.
that backfield should be expected to get 15, 20, 25 carries, because it's
When they're
probably not going
down
to be
by
the case.
15 from the first quarter. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, would you rather bank on Kareem Hunt having a pretty solid week, or would you rather, you know, do a Hail Mary play and hope that somehow the Chiefs fall apart? And, it happens. It's football. These things do
Right.
happen,
Any
but when
given
you make these
Sunday.
lineup decisions, you need to be smart about, how do I handle this, Hail Mary play? Is it a 1 in a million? Is it a 1 in 10,000? Is it a 1 in 100? Because you want to increase your odds as much as possible. Also want to, give yourself a little bit of risk to get upside. But I think in this case, it's just hard to not play Kareem Hunt there.
Yeah, and so what I wanted to say too is like Demetric Felton randomly took the snap leadership last week, 60% of the snaps. He had 0 rush attempts, 1 target. But for a quote unquote committee that Nick Chubb was essentially dominating as a lead back with even a 3-down workload, seeing passing work, like was actually getting targets multiple times in multiple games, had more targets than Kareem Hunt. I guess can be multiple times in the same game, but you guys know what I'm trying to say. But last week, Kareem Hunt led the team in weighted opportunity ratings. So when, third downs, pass catching situations inside the red zone, which they didn't really get there, but point proven. And he had 31% of the rushing attempts and a season high 13.6% target share. Yeah, Kareem Hunt seems to kind of actually be, as Themi said, somebody that you can at least project a path to some sort of fantasy points in your lineup, where then the other two can't really be said, especially with Michael Carter coming back from Ty Johnson's perspective. Jake from IT in here for my RB2, Rachaad White versus the 49ers, Kareem Hunt, who we just covered against Cincinnati, or do I drop Hunt and activate Dobbins / grab Jeff Wilson against the Chargers? It's a half PPR 10-man league. I would say right off the rip, I think Jeff Wilson is the play here.
Yeah, I knew you'd say that. It depends. Who would you have to drop to get Jeff Wilson? Because, if it's a 10-man league, you're probably not dropping someone who's going to be able to be immediately picked up, because there's so much
Kareem
like
Hunt
depth
seems like the
on the
drop,
waiver wire.
obviously.
Yeah,
Because he's already saying drop Hunt for Dobbins. So I think Hunt would be the process of elimination for him, which, I mean, Hunt really is a drop candidate in 10-man leagues.
yeah. I think there's too much depth on the waiver wire. You're not really risking someone grabbing like a league-winning piece unless Nick Chubb happens to go down. But do you want to, potentially lose the week and also bank on an injury? I don't think that's, a smart way to play. I agree with you, Matt. Grab Jeff Wilson.
Yeah, well, but I mean, and that said, when you're talking about dropping a Kareem Hunt and having it be banked into injury, you can almost say the same thing about, I mean, Dobbins, obviously, we don't know. The knee was an issue all season. He had the one positive game that was attached to 2 touchdowns, but low efficiency. And then needed a scope on that same knee to repair the ligament or, remove scar tissue and help the ligaments heal. Jeff Wilson, if Raheem Mostert goes down, has league-winning upside. Kareem Hunt, if Nick Chubb goes down, has league. But that's the same play. You're just banking on an injury. And if Raheem Mostert gets hurt, then Jeff Wilson seeing 20 touches in a Miami offense is absolutely RB1 week in, week out league-winning upside. So, yeah, I do think that Jeff Wilson is the play here. Rachaad White is somebody that I'm incredibly concerned about. I think needs to be peppered with targets. And part of the reason why I don't think that's going to happen is I'm not overly confident in Brock Purdy, except for, deep super flex leagues, of actually maintaining that offense moving forward. Yes, it's Kyle Shanahan and essentially like I could walk in there and pitch and catch for 200 and 2 touchdowns because of their yards after the catch ability of every weapon they have. But that said, the Chargers defense, I think, is just such a great matchup for Jeff Wilson. Rachaad White is a little downgraded, and Kareem Hunt doesn't hold much other upside than what we were talking about earlier. Yeah, like guys like Ty Johnson and Mike Boone, you could probably feel confident enough starting him over. But when your other options are dudes that are legitimately putting up points on their own volition and not necessarily, needing that lead back to be injured, because Jeff Wilson has been the lead back in Miami at points this season. Steve Breakey in the flex, Gerald Everett, Michael Gallup, Trent Sherfield, who caught the big touchdown to open up the game, but then was effectively shut out, Mike Boone, or Ty Johnson. So he's adding a few to the question here. But I think since we covered that part, it's Mike Boone, Ty Johnson. I'm not feeling incredibly. I would in the flex feel great about Michael Gallup or Gerald Everett in here. I think the Houston Texans defense, especially in true matchup rank, are a little sneaky for passing. They're very good, at least as points over average tells us. But a part of that is because of how weak they are against the run. You don't have to pass against them. They're also the lowest team pass attempts, the defense with the lowest team pass attempts against them per game. So that obviously plays into the narrative of why their points over average is so low. That said, they're also without Derek Stingley this week. Their shutdown corner that has helped them. Jalen Peter playing the backstop safety, locking down one half the field. Stingley on the other side has actually been, part of the reason that they've looked a lot better than just the narrative of them being passed on at fewer times. So I feel good about Michael Gallup seeing his target share spike and obviously high production come. Finally, has surpassed Noah Brown in that snap percentage role, which is odd, but they were obviously easing him back in after injury. I feel good about Gallup or Everett. I think Gallup over Everett, though.
Okay. Yeah, those are my two options too. I basically eliminate Boone and Johnson. They don't offer any safety at all. They don't offer a ton of upside, like we already discussed. Trent Sherfield, he's been a big play guy, and he gets like a decent amount of volume in this offense, but it's like fancy Tutu Atwell. Like, do you want like to bank on one big play to maybe exceed what Michael Gallup and Gerald Everett are doing? So I think like he's a pretty cool, play in deep leagues as a flex. A nice name to look out for, but I'm not starting him. But I'm actually going Everett here.
Yeah.
The Cowboys offense is so good when they're running. They have Tony Pollard, they have Ezekiel Elliott. And like you said, teams can just like obliterate them. They're 17-point favorites, I think, still. And, there's a chance that, someone like CeeDee Lamb or Michael Gallup or, Dalton Schultz, whatever, just catches like 3 touchdowns. But the odds are that one of them or two of them or all of them are going to get game scripted out after like, the second half or the first
21-point lead. Yeah.
So it's like Gallup definitely has so much more upside than Everett. But Miami's a great matchup. They're the 4th in true matchup rank against the tight end. Like we said, we kind of expect this to be, a game where Miami's winning. Everett's going to be catching passes. So I'd slightly lean Everett over Gallup, but Gallup is easily second at worst.
Yeah. Charles Kearney, a regular. RB2 question, a must win. It's week 14. We got a lot of must wins today. So let's get it. Full PPR, Dobbins, Homer, Hilliard, or Drake. Leaning heavy towards Homer. I think you have to. Yep. I think you have to as well. Hilliard has been efficient in very, very minimal volume. Again, one of those guys that sure, if Derrick Henry goes down, Hilliard could be a league-winning asset for sure. J.K. Dobbins, haven't really seen it this season, and I'm certainly not expecting to see it in his first game back after another knee scope. Kenyon Drake, again, everybody active, healthy or not, but everybody active in that offense just hurts each other. Doesn't necessarily help. And Snoop Huntley's propensity for rushing as well certainly, minimizes some of their volume there. I think, yeah, you're leaning heavy towards Homer. I think that's where you got to go.
Yep. No arguments here.
Thanks. Oh, yeah. We appreciate you for hopping in. Thanks, Nick. We appreciate you hopping in. Good morning, fellas. Big Will, my boy. Bench 1.5 PPR. Devin Singletary versus the Jets. Travis Homer versus the Panthers. Rachaad White versus the Niners. Bench 1.
I think you bench Singletary here.
Yeah, I think you do too.
Because as much as we don't, at least Matt despises his homeboy Rachaad White, just because of the matchup. And this offense isn't very good, but mostly the matchup. Rachaad White is probably going to catch more passes. Devin Singletary is like a safe-ish bet to get like a decent amount of points. So might score like a touchdown. That's the great thing about playing on such a great team. But, I think if you want to start 2 of 3, you got the home run play in Travis Homer, and you got Rashad White, who's probably going to offer you as much safety as Devin
As
Singletary
Devin
does.
Singletary, especially in PPR. Yep.
And he's probably going to be the main back, whereas Singletary, like you said about James Cook, James Cook is slowly, becoming the guy in the offense, whether, it's deserved or
2 out
not,
of
doesn't
3
really
ain't
matter.
bad.
Yeah, whether it's deserved or not. I mean, he's a professional football player. Let's get that out of the way. I'm not trying to bash.
Yes.
I don't think anyone.
No, for
thought it-
sure. No,
but-
legitimately, he's a professional football player with a second round draft grade on one of the best offenses in the NFL.
Yeah, it's like even if he's like a Clyde Edwards-Helaire situation, it's like they used Clyde a lot for a while. For a decent amount of time, they used Clyde, and they still kind of do. So it's like whether Singletary gets more rushing yards over expected, they don't care. They're going to use Cook more, at least right now. That's what they're indicating. But I think it's between. No, I think it's Singletary. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you there. So let's hop into Charles' next one. I'm just double clicked on him. Let's hop into Alejandro's next one. Last one, that's pretty similar. Full PPR start one. Zonovan Knight, Latavius Murray, or Slayton. And we touched.
Charles.
Wait,
Why would you skip Charles?
Did I? Oh man,
How
my
dare
bad.
you?
That was
you sent 2 questions. Relax.
That was my bad.
Man.
My bad, Charles. My bad. Full PPR flex. We'll get to Alejandro's in 1 second. Full PPR flex. Start 2. Corey Davis, Josh Reynolds, James Cook. I mean, the James Cook, we just touched on it there. At least we hit the analysis on your question without doing it purposely. Corey Davis and James Cook is going to be my answer here.
I like that. We expect the Jets to pass a lot. Corey Davis is basically the wide receiver 2, could be the wide receiver 1, but I think Garrett Wilson's kind of, made himself clear. And Elijah Moore is just, he's getting a little more into the offense, but, Josh Reynolds doesn't really have a role anymore. He was thriving a little bit early in the season, but
DJ Chark is looking healthy and very competent. Not to mention that Jamison Williams is back. Yes, played almost exclusively on special teams. Wow, couldn't get that sentence out. But played almost exclusively on special teams last week. Saw only 2 snaps on offense. But he is back. And I don't think he's going to be anything for 4 weeks. I think the Lions know what their trajectory is for the 2023 season to look ahead towards that and have a healthy row of murderers. But that said, Josh Reynolds, certainly with DJ Chark, DeAndre Swift, all of those other healthy options. Yeah, Corey Davis and James Cook is the play here. Sorry for missing that question, Alejandro. Charles. Now on to Alejandro. Last one that's pretty similar, full PPR, start 1, Zonovan Knight. We did cover the Dulcich and Njoku. We're a little split, but I see where Themi's coming from. And Njoku kind of just has such a succinct role and certainly more upside, considering that Broncos offense. Zonovan Knight, Latavius Murray, or Darius Slayton was where I found interesting. I love Darius Slayton, but Eagles defense. So that's where that gets real tough.
Yeah, I don't love a lot of these options, but this is presumably a flex because you have running backs and wide receivers. And my philosophy is always, if it's like running backs and wide receivers that are pretty close in terms of maybe value, I kind of go with the wide receiver, especially with the game script kind of playing into Slayton's favor. I do expect, because the Eagles have a pretty bad run defense and the Giants have a really great running offense, I do expect this to be kind of a rushing game with, Saquon if he plays or whoever else, and Daniel Jones kind of rushing. But, I feel like 2 or 3 Slayton receptions kind of beats out what we expect for Zonovan Knight or Latavius Murray. And I think late in the game, you could kind of see where that's coming from.
I think it would be generally safe to project all 3 of those options under 80 yards total, like scrimmage yards, but above, maybe 65, 70. So that said, Slayton has that attached in PPR. That's going to come with 3 or 4 catches. So that 70 is now 10, whereas Zonovan's Knights might be 2 catches and Latavius Murray's might be 1. I think it's also similar. I like Slayton's upside. I do think the Giants are going to have to play from behind. I see what you're like. I see what you mean. The path to success is certainly being able to keep it a rushing game, but I think the Giants are going to have to play from behind here a little bit. And Slayton has just, for better or worse, then we get notifications up in here, for better or worse, been the wide receiver one.
It was my alarm. I don't know why I have an
Giants,
alarm till 11:30. Anyway,
because it's time. It's crunch time.
Yeah, it's crunch time an hour late. Yeah, just in case I didn't wake up.
Yeah, I think that's. I think we can both agree on that. So hopping into Trey. First, happy Sunday. Happy Sunday to you too, Trey. He needs wait. Scratch that. No Palmer. Just call me crazy if you don't agree with sitting Rachaad White for Zonovan Knight. Would you sit? So that kind of comes down to, I think that falls on me a little bit more, to be honest, because I have Rachaad White obviously as a bust this week in Broto Fantasy Sleeper Bust article. Please go to the app, go to the website, join the Patreon, all the good stuff to check out the amazing content that our crew pushes out every single week, every single day. I don't think you're crazy benching Rachaad White for Zonovan Knight. And I'm not even high on Zonovan this week, particularly with Michael Carter back with a presumably bad matchup, them playing from behind. But I don't think it's that crazy. I do think that for sure, Leonard Fournette will get some work. Limited, yes, but for sure, Leonard Fournette will get some work. For sure, Chris Godwin is going to dominate the targets. And for sure, Rachaad White has the worst matchup of any running back in the NFL this week. That said, I think Zonovan presents a very similar floor and potentially a higher ceiling, where I don't have Rachaad projected to find the end zone like he did last week, which saved what was a absolutely horrendous outing.
Well, I mean, part of that was the fumble, right? They basically put him in the doghouse.
But I mean, that also tells you how short his leash is.
That's true. That's true. Who's the RB3 in that offense?
Keyshawn Vaughn.
I mean, he actually did get some work, I think.
Yeah. I mean, he has. Yes. No. I mean, I feel like I would.
Week.
Yeah.
All right.
But
no, I don't think it's crazy either. It would be so hard for me to sit Rachaad White for Zonovan Knight because of the name value, but the name value isn't like, it's like an overplayed kind of thing. It's, just because Rachaad White is the RB2, RB1, if Leonard Fournette doesn't play or, is limited, you have to go with the better play. And, I don't think it's that crazy, but I don't know. I mean, it's basically a coin flip. Do you want the same production with a little more upside? Go for it. Actually, that's not even a coin flip, man. That's just start him. Yeah, start Zonovan Knight.
Yeah, exactly. Let Brown about something that we said earlier. Amari will be on a pitch count. Yeah, probably with that hip coming on during practice this week and not really being like a game injury that he was able to manage throughout the week. Yeah, most likely a pitch count. Looking like an ugly offense again for them. And then David Njoku a little more upside as well. Jamal Williams, George Pickens, or Travis Homer at flex. Full PPR, asks Lev. Man, I don't think you can't bench an RB1.
Yeah.
Like even in a lower, obviously, even in the first game of any games that DeAndre Swift finally saw more rushing attempts, more snap counts, Jamal still found the end zone, still leads the NFL in touchdowns. It's James Conner of last year. Like, you don't want to see how the production gets into your lineups. You don't want to click and be like, oh, he had 12 yards, but the production is there. And also, healthy or not, DeAndre Swift, they get that ball inside of the 10-yard line, and DeAndre Swift isn't coming out. Like, he's not seeing the field. It's the Jamal Williams show as soon as they are sniffing the end zone. And they will pound it, 3-4 times on fourth down until he finds it, and he finds it. He's leading the NFL in touchdowns for non-quarterbacks. It has to be Jamal Williams until he stops being an RB1 in points per game. Then you can't bench him. And I don't think that's happening this season. Big Will up in here because we did answer a question of his on the podcast about a trade. He has Garrett Wilson and Njoku. About that, Garrett Wilson and Njoku for Schultz and Pickens and a draft pick. The person just sent me Pickens, the 9th pick in the draft, and a 10 team for Garrett Wilson. So he has Garrett Wilson. Would you trade a late first and a 10 man? It's still a late first and a 12 man. It doesn't matter. It's 9th or 10th pick. That doesn't change so much. more so second round value picks are what changes in 10 man 12 when you're talking about, oh, I have an early second. Well, that's really a late first. But anyway, that said, he has Garrett Wilson. I will go out there right now and say I would smack if I had the 10th pick, the 9th pick, and George Pickens, and a contending roster rebuilder, doesn't matter, sent me Garrett Wilson for that, I would smash. I would walk away with Garrett Wilson and not think twice. I don't think Schultz and Njoku is genuinely that big of a gap, especially in dynasty leagues. When you're looking at tight end ones in dynasty, it should not be the top 12. It should be the top 4. That's a tight end one, because dynasty has such, the nuances of value change are massive, but they're specifically greater for the tight end position. You see such huge fluctuations of value, and that value fluctuates positionally, but not really overall. Like, yeah, David Njoku might be the tight end 6, but you can't go and trade him and a second for tight end 3, which would be Kyle Pitts. Do you know what I mean? So it's not the same positional value as the wide receiver 6. You could trade a second and add up to wide receiver 3 sort of thing. So that said, it's Garrett Wilson by a long shot, in my opinion, because I don't have the value gap between Schultz and Njoku to be overly significant.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think someone brought up the fact that I think Zach Ertz or Dallas Goedert are still like top 5 or top 6 tight ends, and they haven't played in however many weeks. You get like 5 points per game out of the tight end, 14. It's not good.
And then speaking of Njoku as a tight end 6 in dynasty consensus rankings, he was also a tight end 18 before the season started in consensus. So that's the type of value changes that you see because of the landscape of the position. It is one of the only positions that is specifically tied into production, or the age breakouts and things like that, because they come so late in their careers in the first place, don't matter nearly as much unless you have a Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce, Kyle Pitts. Like, and then that's it. Everybody else is, tight end 4 or tight end 5 is tight end 15.
Yeah.
I love talking dynasty on here. Sorry, I took a little long with that one. We got to get back into these questions. We are falling behind a little bit. We got about 23 minutes left. They're popping off in the chat, so let's get them going. Oh, what up, Jim? Said good morning. Now let's hop back in. I'm second place in my league. I'm playing first place guy, but he's not setting his lineup for some reason. I'm also commish. Should I do the right thing and tell him to start his guys? Yes, you're the commish, man. I mean, second place is also, it might cost you your bye, but it's not going to cost you your playoff spot. So the morality shouldn't be pulling at you quite as much. You got to do the right thing as a commission. That also kind of sets the incentives for everybody else in your league to like fall in line with the proper practices and be good league mates.
Yeah. And also as the commish, people might think there's some collusion going on, or that you're, disingenuous because you're allowing this to go on. So, you want a good image of yourself because you want to be a good person and, influence the league, like you said, Matt. You'd love to get the win. I'm versing a guy who's 2-11. He hasn't set his lineup. I'm not going to tell him because that's a league with, a bunch of random guys. But, I'm not the commission that league. I'm just some random guy too. But yeah, if I'm the commission of league, like in one of my leagues, I literally send out like weekly reminders, like, hey guys, do waivers, because these people are like new at fantasy. I tell them like, hey guys, I give a recap of like the top scores, the closest games. And, I tell everyone like, hey, I give people advice when they verse me. I tell them who to start. And then they beat me. So, but
yeah, that's one of my downfalls in dynasty leagues is people will like ask me about values, like, but they'll do it sneakily. Like they'll DM me on Twitter and I'll be like, I won't think twice about it because I don't like look at everybody's rosters necessarily, or at least have them like stacked in my head. Like I have spreadsheets, of course.
Yeah.
But they'll be like, yeah, should I trade Olave for ETN in a second? And I'm like, yeah, you like take ETN in the pick. And then I see trade has been completed. And I'm like, motherfucker. Yeah. So, but that's just it, man. When you're the commish, you kind of have to be transparent like that, and that is the burden of being the commissioner. Jim hopping in with his first question. He's got another one right after that. I mean, I can hit that one pretty quickly. Start Trevor Lawrence. I like Trevor Lawrence. And I love Jared Goff, but you're talking about essentially what I think is a top 10 QB versus a low end QB1. And so first question, full PPR start to DJ Moore, Tyler Boyd, Jerry Jeudy, Deontay Foreman, DJ Chark. Smash start Deontay Foreman. Seattle Seahawks, 5th best matchup in true matchup rank, 4th overall in true matchup rank to points over average to rushing production alone. Deontay Foreman is a bruising beast of high-end rushing production lately. 4 to 6 games over 100 scrimmage yards, 4 to 6 games in RB1 territory. Only 2 games this season outside of RB25 after seeing the starting role. Yeah, you're smashing Deontay Foreman. So, start 1, DJ Moore, Tyler Boyd, DJ Chark, Jerry Jeudy.
I think Tyler Boyd.
Really? Jamar Chase back, T. Higgins hampered with the hamstring, I suppose.
Yeah. DJ Moore.
I think DJ Moore is a safe sit. I think Jerry Jeudy, when you're comparing him to, well, Jeudy over Boyd, I think is safe, but I'm almost leaning DJ Chark.
That's fair. High projected game. Probably going to need, it's a little close, even though the Lions are favored after opening as, underdogs. Yeah, not the sexiest name, but pretty good. I think Jerry. Okay, I think
thanks, Larry.
You go Chark over Jeudy, in my opinion, and then it's do you want Chark or Tyler Boyd, and then it's like, well, the Bengals might blow them out, but they're not projected to, but it's not that high projected of a game. Then you have the point total and the spread in favor of Chark. But you also run the risk of them just running the ball a lot, even though I like Goff a lot.
Yeah, and I mean, Chark's target share has certainly been mediocre, but has been increasing. And 6 or more targets in 3 of the last games, and that's come with some decent production. Tyler Boyd, I do think, is a little bit of a hit or miss when all 3 are healthy. I mean, it's been, we've seen it. You can't allocate 30% target share to all 3 of them, especially when Mixon is getting 80% of the opportunities in the first place. Yeah. DJ Chark, I think, that's just it. It's the matchup. It's the game script. It's those things. I kind of see a touchdown for him here. I see 5 for 68 and possibly a touchdown, which is basically what I would see for Tyler Boyd. Jerry Jeudy, maybe a few more receptions, but not a higher yardage total. Deontay Foreman is a smash top 10 running back for me this week. I think it's DJ Chark. And then, maybe you could make the argument to start Jared Goff and get that stack in there.
I like that.
Yeah.
Both are good.
Yeah. I don't think you go wrong with the Trevor Lawrence and Jared Goff. Again, like I said, I have both projected as the top 12, both as QB1s this week. Trevor Lawrence with a bit of a higher output.
Yeah. He's not probably going to have to run as much, whereas Goff can afford to hand off the ball a lot.
Right.
But then you look at the point totals and it becomes a little muddy.
Steve Brakey wanted to mention that he had Mike Williams too. So let me scroll back up to throw down his question. We might have been a little slow on it. Okay, yeah, the Kareem Hunt, Boone, half PPR, and then in the flex, Gallup, Sherfield, Mike Boone. I would start Mike Williams over all of those guys.
Yep. Yeah.
In this matchup against Miami with a terrible secondary, super high allocation of points on both sides, the Tua versus Justin Herbert narrative, all of the pass catchers healthy, and man, Mike Williams has been a stud when is healthy, and obviously aggravated the ankle injury on the first play of the last game that he returned. But yeah, I can't bench Mike Williams for a Gerald Everett or Gallup in my flex because I think he presents an equal floor in this matchup with an incredibly higher ceiling. Like our wide receiver 1 ceilings, right? And Keenan Allen as well, but no Keenan Allen questions yet. Garrett Irwin, half PPR, starting 2, Kareem Hunt, Travis Homer, Samaje Perine, who Joe Mixon is 100% back. That's an 80% opportunity share. Zach Taylor's maybe one of the only coaches other than Mike Vrabel that whoever is the first name on the list in the depth chart, it doesn't matter if they're a 7th string or if they're Joe Mixon or Derrick Henry, that guy is getting an 80% opportunity share. So Samaji's certainly down. Well, yeah, I mean, I guess, but even then, like you were starting to see a bit of a split with Jalen Warren and Najee because he was like, this kid is just terrible.
Little bit, yeah.
But certainly downgrade Samaje this week. I think that's fair to say. Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins. So I think it's going to come between Edwards, Dobbins, Homer, Hunt. The start is guaranteed homer. I think you just have to play the home run hitter here. I think you have to play the supposed uptick in volume, even though he's had this role before and never seen double-digit touches. You have to play it. You have to play the risk. But there's certainly a good floor of production there too for Homer, because he's really the only member of the backfield right now. DJ Dallas is also not expected to suit up. Kareem Hunt over Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins feels a lot grosser than it is, I think.
Yeah, I'd just go Hunt and Homer.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
Yeah.
you get the home run hint, and then you get a little bit of safety with a lot of upside versus two guys who are probably going to like destroy each other in not a great matchup. It just doesn't seem like you want to bank on either Edwards or Dobbins this week in really any situation, unless you're like very desperate.
Yep. And this, I mean, this is a desperate set of names, but there's less desperation with the two guys that are already projected to score more with better matchups.
Yep.
Jordan Riley, he says he's got Diggs locked in as wide receiver 1, as you should. He needs a wide receiver 2 and flex out of these. Mike Evans, Mike Williams, Devontae Smith, and Zay Jones. I think those are some really solid options. And as crazy as it is to like, work from the bottom up, I think Zay Jones might actually be the best start out of all of these options this week.
I don't think that's crazy.
His last three games,
talked about it. The matchup, at least.
Best possible matchup in the NFL for wide receivers. Number 1 in points over average rank. They allow over 30 points per game. That's over 30% over the average. Devontae Smith has been absolutely excellent as a target earner, as a consistent and efficient option. But that said, Zay Jones has had 14, 10, and 7 targets in his last 3 games, averaging over 13 points per game in those 3. He's somebody that I was feeling pretty high on our Broto Fantasy Thursday podcast, which you can also find wherever you get your podcast, whether it be Spotify or Apple. He was a tier breaker up for me as somebody that I think it has a sleeper potential kind of to finish in the top 15, 16 this week against that matchup. I'm okay benching Mike Evans. Devontae Smith over Mike Williams is kind of what it's coming down to for me. And I'm going to let you take that while I stew.
Yeah, the thing about Devontae Smith is that he's getting a lot of targets. He's obviously the wide receiver 2, and with Dallas Goedert out, it's clearly AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. But you look at Devontae Smith's game logs a lot, and it's like he gets a lot of targets, and they're not always turning into things. And when they do, it's great. Like last week, he caught 5 targets, 102 yards, and a touchdown. Like that probably won you that, whatever that matchup is. Like when you look at your wide receiver 1 versus wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2 versus 2, you probably won that matchup. But then you look and, sometimes it's just getting by, 5 receptions for 23 yards against Pittsburgh, but that was in a blowout. So did they really need him as a deep threat? And with how good this team is, with how much they're always winning, they've lost 1 game. The Eagles don't always have the incentive to pass a lot.
Right.
So it's like Devontae Smith is an incredible wide receiver in real life. He's going to make plays, and he has the chance to get, a touchdown or 2 and, 100 yards. But against the Giants team that's not great on the ground and against the pass, it's like, well, are they just going to run all over the Giants? Are they going to just throw to A.J. Brown because he's the better wide receiver, and he's been, proving that with his stats at least, that, he deserves the targets. I think he offers much more safety because you look at his game logs and his floor is pretty solid. Like he's probably going to get you double digits versus Mike Williams in a situation where, the offense just kind of falls apart a lot. Not really anyone's fault specifically. It's just, a lot of injury, a lot of mismanagement.
Loss of Rashawn Slater has really been the biggest downfall of that offense. That's why, the number 1 paid position in the NFL is quarterback, and the number 2 is left tackle. Well, I guess wide receiver after that market switch in the offseason. But, right, like that's so. Yeah, I mean, it is interesting to say, too. I wanted to kind of throw it out there that Devontae had received over 30% target share in 3 consecutive games, leading the Eagles in targets ahead of A.J. Brown before the revenge game against the Titans last week. And in that revenge game, he just saw 2 fewer targets, still put up 100 yards and a touchdown. I think I'm going to lean Devontae Smith because part of the reason I was stewing is to pull up the true matchup rank, 12th and 14th. 12th and 14th for the Giants and the Chargers, or the Giants and the Dolphins rather, which are the opposing matchups. Devontae has essentially just as good of a matchup in true matchup ranking as Mike Williams has, and has a little bit more. I think, at least, I think there is safety may not be the right word, but I think there's a little bit more to look forward to in that Eagles offense with Smith.
Yeah. It's just so hard to bench all of those guys. Like your lineup is so good, your bench is so good. It could be another team.
Yeah. I mean, that's always a good problem to have, but yeah, it is hard, and I think Zay is the start here, and I think Devontae Smith is going to give you kind of what you need in that flex spot if you're starting, or I mean, start him as a wide receiver 2, start him as a flex, your wide receiver options regardless. Ryan in here. I'm not going to try to pronounce your last name, Ryan. Much love though. Full PPR: Foreman, DJ Moore, Zay Jones. I mean, we can just piggyback off of the Jordan's question right here. I think it's Zay Jones, and I think you're probably going to agree.
Yeah, if it was
Deontay
standard,
Foreman.
maybe.
Oh
Yeah, but it's full
if it was,
PPR. Foreman's not catching.
I know exactly.
Passes.
He's not going to catch any. Maybe
So
2.
it's like,
But that's it. So do we allocate a similar target total or yardage total for Zay Jones's PPR upside? Obviously, because I would say at least 5 catches, right? So how many yards would we really need to project Zay to have to outproduce Foreman? I've got Foreman around 120 with getting a touchdown though, so that's around 18 points. I could see Zay Jones getting around 18 points as well. That's what I mean. My heart immediately jumped into Zay Jones. I wanted it to be Zay Jones. It's legitimately the best possible matchup for wide receivers. 30 points combined per game. So even if, Christian Kirk gets 15, 16, that still leaves 15, 16 for Zay Jones.
Yeah, and the game script doesn't necessarily always affect Zay Jones at the level that it does in RB, especially when we see how Foreman's, bad games are. I don't expect it to be like the Ravens or the Bengals game where they got, Foreman got, I don't know, 5 or 6 fantasy points at most, and he's not catching passes to like really make up for it. Whereas if the Jaguars are leading a little bit, Zay Jones is still probably going to get involved. He's not going to be like completely phased out of the offense. And with how great Tennessee's rushing defense is, it's not always going to be easy for them to, first down, second down, third down, and then get a new set of downs. They might have to pass on second or third or even first to kind of fake him out.
Yep.
That may be a little, maybe looking into it a little too much. And
I actually genuinely agree. That's always we've said it before. I expect a lot of passing from the Jaguars today. The fate is in their hands. It is a narrative-based analysis, sure, but I think that you can take some of that with a grain of salt and read between the lines and know that if the Jaguars don't put up points on the Titans, their season is virtually over from a playoff standpoint.
Yep.
And they're not going to put up those points on the ground.
No.
Because nobody in the NFL has against that team.
So yeah, lean Zay Jones, but I see your point on Foreman and how, 120 yards and a touchdown is, very, very manageable, very possible.
Absolutely.
But in full PPR, gonna lean Zay Jones.
And I will, also say, like, with a bit of devil's advocate, I suppose, is that would be my absolute ceiling of projections for Deontay Foreman, obviously, right? Yep. That is my ceiling. So I have Zay Jones as a very safe floor play with a quite a similar ceiling, in all honesty, as we did, very recently see him go for 148 yards. Trey said the other week he sat Kamara against 49ers sometimes. And the 49ers are one of those defenses where they haven't allowed an RB1 week yet. So Kareem Hunt or Travis Homer. This seems to be a popular one this week. I hope you were listening earlier, Jordan, but of course, every question will be answered, so we'll touch on it again. The home run hit is with Travis Homer here. Most of these questions have done full PPR, so we haven't really had to do the yardage breakdown for standard formats, but I think it's Homer being the lone back and Kareem Hunt being slightly increased as the secondary back are honestly quite similar projections of touch volume. I still think Kareem Hunt could see around 8 to 12 touches, and Travis Homer, unless game script really does get away and it's a lot of garbage time, which is very possible, right? The Seahawks have been on fire. Then I think Homer around 12 to 15 as well. So kind of a similar touch floor. It's just coming down to the home run hitter. I'll say it, he's never had over double-digit touches in any game of his career, but what has happened in the past does not will not always happen in the present.
Yeah. That happened with Dearness Johnson, I think. There was one point, I think last year or 2 years ago or something, where he, was like the presumed starter and he just didn't get a lot of work and he wasn't efficient. And then it happened again and he wasn't. And then there was another week where it's like, okay, well, it hasn't happened yet. Very small sample size, granted, but then he just went off. And it's like, well, was it the matchup? Was it luck? Was it this? But sometimes it happens. But with Homer, I think you're right. I mean, we've talked it to death at this point, but we could still talk about it.
We got 5 minutes left and we got about like 10 questions to go. So, I mean, we'll probably run a little late, and keep sending them questions in, guys. I don't want to miss nothing, and I want to keep you all informed. And this is a highlight of my week without exaggeration. So on to Tom Brady, Stan, #GO. When saying that out loud as a Saints fan, I'll mention it always burns a little bit. Full PPR, Jameis Williams or Juju Smith-Schuster. Juju Smith-Schuster was a bust candidate for me this week. That said, he actually plays offense. Yep. I mean, no offense. I think Jameson Williams is an absolute stud of a football player. I think he's an top end dynasty asset. I think people should be comfortably have been buying him all season, knowing that, an uptick in 2023 is going to come, but we're not in 2023 yet. And I don't just mean the end of the year either, in January. It took DeAndre Swift 3 games to even see over 30% of the snaps after coming back from injury. His injury was a lot less significant than Jameson Williams. And it's not like the Lions are playing for much. Yeah, they've been on a bit of a heater, but it's still a long shot for them to even make the wild card in the NFC. I don't think that they're even anticipating a playoff berth. And if they get there, they'll be, obviously happy, but Jameson Williams will not be the reason that they got there. He played 2 snaps on offense, mostly on special teams. Even projecting 20 to 30 snaps is very, very menial. That would be less than 50% of the snap share, less than 50% route participation. I'm still going to lean Juju, even though I'm downgrading him heavily.
I think that's fair. I mean, you look at Juju's worst games when he's getting, under 40% of snaps because of, whatever injury or be it. He's still getting you like 5, 6, 7 points in PPR leagues, and this is full PPR. Jameson Williams could come out, shock them, score a touchdown. That'd be a great story. And, maybe something in my gut saying like he's going to catch a touchdown, but Juju probably has an equal chance, probably a better chance, just because he's playing on a great Chiefs offense to score a touchdown when they want to. I don't know if they can seal the division this week, but they're probably getting pretty close. And against a division rival, you'd love to do that.
Yeah. I mean, I do think that there is a bit of an interesting narrative of like, look, we only played him on 2 snaps, and then all of a sudden, like, run one burner route, and we show everybody what speed he actually has, and then bench him for the rest of the game because you don't want him to re-injure that ACL. But yeah. I just mean, we're in week 14. Risk aversion is very important. He literally played 2 snaps on offense. I can't invest into that guy this week.
Yeah, there's a difference between Travis Homer and Jameson.
Right. Well, we got to shout out Big Will. Appreciate you too, brother. Thanks for always coming in with the hot questions. Brandon Eaton in here. Ayuk, Davis, Connor, Thielen, Judy. Pick 2. I'm assuming that's if it's Corey or Gabe Davis, I'll probably have a very similar projection, so don't even really need the first name. Because I'm going to bench whatever Davis for James Conner
and Brandon Ayuk.
And I think. Yeah.
I think you can bench Thielen in this situation. When he goes off, he's pretty good, but I think his snap share and his target share has kind of dropped a little bit.
I mean, he went off once this season.
Was it really kind of like,
wow. Yeah, it really was only once. And it's been horrendously bad outside of that. And like, I kind of like jokingly tweeted like he handed Father Time like a late notice, like not quite yet, but then the following week was immediately like, all right, never mind, come and get me because I am dying out here. But yeah, I think Thielen is a safe, even in I mean, man, that's such a great matchup. Ayuk has a pretty bad matchup. Brock Purdy at quarterback. I might be letting my fandom speak a little too strongly for me, and I should probably do a little bit of a deeper analysis now that I have some stuff in front of me. Yeah, pretty bad matchup against the Buccaneers. Obviously, Brock Purdy at quarterback, lower passing volume, lower scoring totals. I think Connor is a kind of a you have to start until the wheels fall off. Kind of coming down to Thielen and Judy then between me too. I know Mike Petropoulos is very high on, or higher on Judy than consensus this week, knowing that Sutton is out and what should be a terrible game script where they have to pass quite often.
So you would rather have Adam Thielen or Jerry Judy over possibly Corey Davis
or Gabe Davis? Yeah.
Or Gabe Davis?
Yep. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I think I would.
I'm going Connor for sure, like you are. And then when I'm looking at Ayuk now with Brock Purdy, like you said, yeah, maybe it does come, he kind of looks more like Thielen in terms of stats now. I might actually go, if it's like a Davis, I might go with the Davis. If it's Gabe,
I don't hate it. I think there's some good upside. It's Gabe Davis there. He confirmed. Thanks for sticking around and listening, brother.
All right. I actually liked Corey Davis a little more this week. So.
Well, now you got to answer it with Gabe.
Okay.
So, I mean, the home run, Gabe Davis has home run upside.
Yep.
No denying that. Targets are certainly not there. Consistently, certainly not there. He has home run upside. I think Brandon Ayuk is the safest option out of all of these. But Brock Purdy also kind of means good things for Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, because that ADOT goes from Jimmy G's 9 yards to Brock Purdy's 2.5, which Brandon Ayuk is, look up his reception profile for those have it. That kid is as elite of a separator as it comes. And, obviously, finally out of Kyle Shanahan's doghouse is wide receiver 14 overall, putting up 14 points per game this season, is doing very, very well. That said, this matchup, Brock Purdy, Gabe Davis home run hitter. I kind of am leaning Thielen. It's been really bad. I'm kind of leaning Thielen in this matchup. It's Connor for sure. I'm worried about Ayuk. I'm not as worried about Thielen, as bad as he's been. It's really just like more gut than anything, because the matchups are going to tell you, obviously, that they're similar just based not on the true matchup rank, but based on their true matchup rank versus their points per game. Obviously, Ayuk has been smashing all of these guys, right?
Yeah, I think when you look at the matchup and then the state of the offense, Thielen might be in a better position to just kind of slightly, exceed expectations, projections at least. Maybe not more than that, but high point total, possible underdogs away. Well, they are underdogs away, literally.
Yep.
I'd rather take. Yeah, I think I'd rather just take Thielen there now. As middling as he has been. Yeah, as middling as he has been, I'd rather bank on him than Judy. That's about it.
Yep, I think that we'll leave it at that as well. Blurpy with one, he says, should I play? Sorry, Blurpy. I read these names so quickly. I love them. Should I play Chiefs or Seahawks D? I'm holding on to the Chiefs D for next week when they play Houston. Smart. Hold on to that defense and feel confident about playing the Chiefs defense this week. Feel confident about it. Maybe Seahawks will outscore them this week, but you certainly it's going to be menial. I mean, if there's a defensive touchdown on the side, then obviously that will greatly increase, but you're not predicting that. You're never putting that into your predictions really when you're doing defensive projections. And I like these defensive start sit questions. I think the Chiefs are a safe option. They're kind of, every defense starts at 10 points or whatever, and then it's just a subtraction, or usually. The Seahawks are averaging this in 300 scrimmage yards and 13 points per game, or rather the Broncos. The Broncos are averaging. So them playing just their averages gives you essentially 8 fantasy points from a defense. Just the Broncos being on the field gives you 8 fantasy points. Like that's all it takes. As long as they play a game, that opposing defense has an 8-point floor.
Yeah, I think that's fine. And the Chiefs probably have a better overall defense. I think Sam Darnold could do some damage. It's not a situation where, I don't know. The thing about defense is it's very random. Even when you have a great defense in fantasy, Major Jordan vibes. What the heck is that?
He's going to have to clarify. It's Tim. You never know with him, my friend.
The only major I know is Major Laser. Anyway.
Bars.
Anyway, yeah, I don't know. I'm not a big team defense guy, but I would have to imagine the Chiefs are a very chalky play. And every time I play a chalky play, they disappoint me. But yeah, I don't see why you don't start the Chiefs and just assume that Russell Wilson continues to kind of suck.
Especially if you have to drop them for the Seahawks defense, like sort of thing. Just hold on to them, keep that defense in your lineup, and if you're rostering 2 defenses, stop. One more question from Joe before we hop out. We do have a few more that we're going to cover. Tim hopped in at the buzzer. We'll get his question too. Full PPR. Marquise Brown, Mike Evans. It's Marquise Brown in a smash for me. Not even particularly close, to be honest. People still want to sleep on the fact that Marquise has never once in his career had fewer targets. He's the number 1 wide receiver on every single team he's ever been on, and that's teams with CeeDee Lamb and Mark Andrews back in college. That kid, he is as elite of a target earner as it comes. Yes, over DeAndre Hopkins, outsnapped him by about 20%, out targeted him by 4. Like, he's their wide receiver 1, man, and I kind of thought it the whole time. Also, you know who that quarterback was in Oklahoma that was delivering Marquise Brown's all of those passes instead of targeting CeeDee Lamb and instead of targeting Mark Andrews? Happens to be his quarterback right now in Arizona. Next question. Thoughts on Brock Purdy this week? I think we touched on that enough, but should I start him over Josh Palmer, Latavius Murray, Kareem Hunt, or Mike Evans? Knowing that it's a super flex, 12 points from Brock Purdy is probably a little bit more useful in that super flex spot than the ceiling of 12 points that you're getting from Latavius Murray, the floor of 8 with a potential for maybe 12 from Kareem Hunt. I do still think that Brock Purdy is a top 24 quarterback this week. I will say that. So that said, that is roughly around 12 points. I think you put Brock Purdy in the super flex spot here.
Yeah. I wonder what the bonus for first downs is, though, because I assume that doesn't include passing. I assume that's a receiving rushing thing.
Good
but
point.
With a quarterback, it's weird. This is something you kind of like have to project out, but it's like, how many times would Brock Purdy kind of QB sneak or run for a first down? And then what's the bonus? But yeah, I think you're right. 12 points is probably about what you want from him. And it's probably very attainable.
That's pretty much a floor too. You're talking, 190 in 1 touchdown with no turnovers.
A few rushing yards.
Yeah, exactly. So I do think that is very attainable, where that is essentially, minus a touchdown, Latavius Murray's ceiling. And Josh Palmer is just he's not a target earner, man. He's a wide receiver handcuff, as weird as it is to even say that, but like, he needs both of those guys, both Mike Williams and potentially even Gerald Everett, to be out of the lineup for him to actually see over 30% share. Otherwise, Justin Herbert can just allocate to whoever he wants. And we saw when Mike Williams was unhealthy, Keenan Allen was healthy, and Josh Palmer was healthy, DeAndre Carter got 11 targets. So yeah, I think in that super flex scenario, Brock Purdy just for the floor. Morning, gents. Trey getting in at the buzzer as well. Full PPR start to Juju, Boyd, Singletary, Judy, Rachaad White. I'm forced to start Dulcich if that impacts Judy. Not necessarily. I don't worry so much about those types of stacks. It's more of a DFS play, in my opinion. I mean, points are points. And in fact, there might be a little bit of safety there. If somebody has to catch passes, it's going to be one of them. So why don't you lock down the 15 points of production that are going out there, rather than, I missed out and started the wrong one. So start 2, Juju. Kind of a sit for me this week. I would start Boyd over Juju, so I can eliminate him. Boyd, Singletary, Judy, Rachaad White.
It's Boyd or Judy at this point.
Exactly. I agree with you. I think volume, we're talking full PPR. I think volume for floor and for ceiling is going to err on the side of Jerry Judy in this matchup.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I would probably start Tyler Boyd just because I'm a little, I just think he's better. And, the team is, I mean, you're right. They could just run a lot against the great
for all of the Travis Homer analysis that we gave. Tony Jones is going to be the starter over him today. That was just announced. Thank you very much, Hanson De La Garza, for hopping in and giving us some breaking news. Yeah, everybody that's still listening, Travis Homer is maybe not the best play, but all of those questions were obviously as well, like, Kareem Hunt, Travis Homer, still maybe even Travis Homer with Tony Jones in the starting lineup. I'm a Saints fan. I've watched Tony Jones play football. He's not an NFL caliber player. Let's get Tim's question in here. I hopped ahead of him for a little bit of news. Oh yeah, and I mean, Trey, hopefully you're still listening. We sided on Judy here. Tim with the nonsense. Just this absolute floor of basement production that he needs us to answer about. Demarcus Robinson or Greg Dortch? Not Greg Dortch. Yeah. Is it that easy? Not Greg Dortch? That's really just the only answer that you have. Yeah. Whoever isn't Greg Dortch is the guy that you're going to start. At the buzzer, he said he's all, there. Wait 1 second. Power Rangers, bro. Zordon, Power Rangers.
Okay. I barely watched Power Rangers as a kid.
Yeah. And it does include passing first down bonus. That is going to be heavily skewed towards Brock Purdy.
I'm going Brock Purdy. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a super low floor. You're not getting QB1 numbers from him, but you're going to get RB2 numbers from him. And that's what Murray's going to give you. That's what those other guys are going to give you as well. Najee Harris or Rachaad White, right at the buzzer. Najee Harris. He's finally been clicking, finally putting it together, over 70% opportunities. Yeah, it's looking like Najee of old, which is 1, incredibly inefficient, but 2, incredibly voluminous production for your fantasy lineups. So
terrible matchup, but terrible matchup for Rachaad White too. So
even worse matchup, exactly. And Rachaad White or Najee doesn't really have the the vulturing of the veteran in front of him either. So that said, that wraps it up. If you guys have any more, I will answer right before, as we're doing the closing ceremonies here. But that's it for Crunch Time Week 14. I've been Matt Ward at Psych Ward FF. He's been Themi. Where can they find you, Themi?
At Gridiron Greek. And on my screen, you were pointing the wrong way, which is weird.
He's been Themi. One way. Yeah, at Gridiron Greek on Twitter for all the good vibes. You might have to read between the lines, but there are some very solid analysis in between all the memery and shit posting from Themi. So make sure you follow him there. Oh, damn, I'm
Hanson
excited.
Says, Homer or Chark?
Chark now. Yep.
All right.
Oh, Matt Chester. Much love, everybody. Yeah, so, I mean, there you go. There was the socials. Chark. Thank you for hopping on, guys. As always, it's such a pleasure to answer all your questions. Go get those ships. Go get those playoffs. Get your bye weeks. Go get the Fantasy Football by Broto app on your Google Play, on your Apple Store. Follow us at Gridiron Greek, at PsychWardFF. You can follow the Broto Fantasy podcast and the Broto Boys at Broto Fantasy on Twitter, at BrotoFF Jason, at BrotoFF Tim, at BrotoFF Mike, and at BrotoFF Casanova. As always, thank you again.
Thanks, guys.